You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo Amano. This episode is actually a re-release of an episode we recorded in 2019 with an artist, Les LePere, who just passed last August, and I just found out about it. So I thought it would be really nice to re-release this episode and share it with a new audience and with Les's friends and family as well. Les was an artist based in Harrington, Washington, perhaps most well known for his work with Tom Robbins, the writer. He did the book cover for Still Life with Woodpecker, amongst others. And his work is in the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, the Boston Art Museum, LA County Art Museum. Didn't know Les very well, but we had a great conversation. He's such a nice guy, and we had a great chat. And happy to be able to share this conversation with you. Our next event is March 2nd at noon, the Sunday Donut Experience Artist Talk with Carson Elliott, whose show is up through March 3rd. We have live music with Weston McDowell and donuts and coffee. It's free, and we try to do these donut experiences for a free exhibition. So that's Sunday, March 2nd, 12 to 1:30. And then our next openings are March 7th, Friday, March 7th, 5 to 7 p.m. With Taryn Lastgun and Luis Garcia. Should be a couple of great exhibitions. All right, thank you so much for listening.
I'm ready.
Well, thanks so much for doing this.
You're what?
Yeah.
What a concept. I mean, it's nice to have to know that surprises can still happen.
Yeah. Well, I'm calling this thing a creative excuse. And it's basically, for me, this way for me to connect and talk to creative people that I don't always get a chance to connect with. You know, people that you might see out at openings or whatever, but you say hi, but you never really sit down and have a conversation with them. And it's perfect for folks like you, where I never see you.
Never see you. No,
So-
no.
You know, so this is perfect.
And it fits under that category quite easily.
Yeah.
Did I do this?
Do what? Oh, I don't
Yes.
know. It's fine.
See, this is wet.
Yeah.
It'll come off.
Um,
That means that I have something leaking. Go ahead.
so you're in town for the Smitten Conference, Symposium,
Correct.
Extravaganza.
Extravaganza.
And so it's what fascinates me is how you got involved with with this jewelry community.
Well, I was enrolled at Washington State University in Pullman in the graduate school department, and I got my bachelor's of fine arts from WSU. These were during the years of the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to avoid the war, if you were enrolled in graduate school, you could avoid being drafted.
Right.
So I applied to graduate school at the University of Washington, Washington State, and Pratt. I was accepted to Pratt, University of Washington, and Washington State, but the only place, and then the rules changed, the only place that gave me a TA, teaching assistantship, was WSU. So that was going to keep me out of the draft forever because I had a TA.
Uh-huh.
Well, that lasted 1 quarter. Then they changed the rules.
Oh.
So I had committed the academic, help me with a word here, I had committed academic
Fraud?
because I was doing my graduate work where I'd done my undergraduate work.
Oh.
And the idea during
was
the
a no-no?
graduate, that's a no-no. You want different input than when you're in graduate school than from the people that you've done your undergraduate degree with.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I still got drafted. I shaved my mustache off and got on the bus to be drafted and got to the final medical exam. And the way I filled out page 2, and the medical officer looked at it and said, well, because you've filled out the first question on page 2, we're going to send you to a civilian psychiatrist tomorrow. And just because you're an art student doesn't mean that you don't take classes in other academic pursuits.
Yeah.
So I knew exactly what needed to happen.
Uh-huh.
And after an hour, I got sent to a civilian psychiatrist.
Well, what was the question?
Well, the questions were, how come you think that you're not suited for military life?
Uh-huh.
And I told them, based on my intuition, my love, and my fascination, and my experiences in the art area, because in order to work there in that community effectively, you need to use your creative mind. And the last thing that they want in the military is somebody to be thinking on their own. They want you to follow the rules.
Well, that was very perceptive of you.
That was very perceptive. And so I had even considered cutting fingers off and fleeing to Canada.
Uh-huh.
I was considering a conscientious objector routine, but they had cleaned that program up, and so that was impossible to do. So I got a 1Y. I convinced the civilian psychiatrist that he said, Mr. LePere, I don't think you could even make it on the bus to Fort Lewis on Monday. So I told my parents, my loved ones, people in my bailiwick that I'd had a bad knee based on a high school football injury, and I got a 1Y physical deferment. So that took care of all that, and I went back to WSU, and they gave me my teaching assistantship back the following semester.
So you're what the conservative crew would call it. You were a snowflake.
I was a snowflake. So when I got back to WSU,
Mm-hmm.
Actually, prior to this event in 1966, I was in the process academically of pursuing the academic requirements to become an architect, which had been one of my lifelong loves, passions, and pursuits. I got into the architecture program, and we had the final project in a class with 80 students, a 4-point perspective project, the last project on for that semester. And I struggled, I couldn't make my lines meet, and I spent more time erasing it. And the acting chairman of the department came by and said, Les, are you having some difficulty? I said, Dave, Professor Scott, I can't make any of my lines meet, and look at all, I've been doing all this erasing. He said, let me think about it. In 2 minutes, he turned around and came back, and he took my T-square, Dietzken T-square, put it on my drawing table, and took my Dietzken 30-60-90 triangle, laid the short leg down, drew a vertical line, flopped the triangle, drew a vertical line, and they were approximately a 32nd of an inch off. He had everybody else in the room check, and there was one other Dietzken triangle, which is the Mercedes of architectural tools, that was a 32nd off. So I finished my drawing, got a Charlie. My sister at the time was a C.
Okay.
was married and living at WSU in Pullman with her husband. And I went to her house that night, and I broke into tears. I said, Louise, there was a struggle. All these students that have gone, I graduated from high school in a class of 24, small town. We were prepared, I was on the debate team, I was on the football, basketball team, but academically we were prepared for college. And I told Louise that being in the architecture program, that all these students in that class of 80, 75 of them had already had the classes in high school. So they were already a step or two in front of me academically. And my sister looked at me and said, well, Les, maybe you should take an art class. Up to becoming a senior in high school, I'd had one art class. In 7th grade, I made a pair of cufflinks. Too small of a school, not the room, not the funding or the teachers to teach art. So I went and enrolled in the art department and took a full load in the art department, and the beginning classes are always taught by teaching assistants. The teaching assistants have such a wide range of aesthetics and loves and passions and areas of expertise that you get a well-rounded idea about lots of different kinds of things with respect to art. And in a class of 14 students, there were 12 girls. How could you go wrong? and at the same time, without having any high school education in the art area to get me on the right track, I'd drawn a lot as a kid. I worked in coloring books. I had lots of imaginative projects where I made things, having grown up on the farm. And I was a natural. I got good grades. I loved being around the professors that were working on their masters and the ones that were assistant professors, because of the various philosophies that they were expounding upon. I just loved the variety, and I loved the whole idea of art. And so then what happened down the line was that as a result of that, then I enrolled in graduate school at WSU and got my master's at WSU, and my thesis chairman was Galen Hansen, and I'd had a number of undergraduate classes from him, and he and I were of like minds, and the rest is academic history.
Yeah. So you grew up, did you grow up in the town you're living in now?
Yeah, the town that I grew up next to is a town of 600 people. I graduated from high school in 1964, and the population was 600. Now it has dwindled to 400. And in 1964, I knew 598 of the 600 people. Mm-hmm. Now the older generations have died off, and because of its rural location and its cheap housing, a lot of lower income people have moved in. I don't even know half of the people in my hometown now.
Yeah, it's Eastern Washington. What's the name of the town?
Yeah, it's Harrington. Southwest of Spokane, approximately 50 miles. And I tell people when they ask me where you live, I say I live 20 miles north of Tokyo and 20 miles south of Egypt. Tokyo are 2 grain elevators, and Egypt is 3 grain elevators. It's my nearest neighbor is 2 miles away.
Yeah, and so you came to art later. Were your parents creative at all, or you grew up on a farm, right?
I grew up on a farm, soft white wheat. My father was from a large family. He grew up in southern Illinois. My mother grew up on the farm when I took over the farm, or when I moved back to the farm where I lived, that's where she grew up. And what was your question?
Just kind of like, were your parents, did they have any sort of creative pursuits?
Okay. My dad, having grown up in a family of 8 brothers and sisters, they were very poor corn farmers in the southern part of Illinois. He was the oldest, and when he graduated from high school, his father said, "Well, Eldon, you graduated. We don't have enough food to feed the people in our family now. Goodbye." He got kicked out. And
wow. So
when he came to the farm and married my mother, they lived in Harrington, and he worked was the lumberyard manager for a number of years, for like 3 or 4. And then my mother's 2 brothers who were farming the family ground said, "Eldon, come farm with us." So after my graduate degree, I moved to Seattle, and I taught at a private art school, and I had successful one-man shows at the Manalides Gallery on Pioneer Square in Seattle, and sold out. We'd have a sneak preview, and I'd sell 75-80% of my work before the show opened. And at the same time, to backtrack here a moment, after I'd become enrolled in the Fine Arts graduate program at WSU, during my senior thesis, this little short brunette English-speaking woman came up to me, grabbed my arm, and said, "What are you doing this summer?" And it was Catherine Matthews, and she and her husband had graduated from Cambridge in the architecture program in London, and had moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts, eventually moved to Pullman, WSU, to teach in the architecture program. And Catherine had had an extensive graphic design program as her secondary degree from Cambridge. She saw my senior thesis show, grabbed my arm and said, "What are you doing this summer? I want you to come work with me." So a cardinal sin was being committed here, because I was being paid as a TA from the art department, and I was being paid as a part-time assistant graphic designer from the University Graphics. But the boss loved Catherine and loved my work so much that they pulled strings in order to make it happen. The experience and the techniques and the tools that I learned to use as a result of that time working with Catherine, a graphic designer, helped me survive when I got to Seattle with an MFA. I thought when you had an MFA that you were ready to conquer the world.
Yeah.
3 letters. It doesn't mean a damn thing.
What were you showing at that what kind of work were you doing at that time? When you graduated, were you doing drawings? Or?
Yes, I was doing colored. I was doing India ink and watercolor, coloring the India ink drawings in with watercolor, and they were 4 inches square. And I did over 100 of them. And then when I got to the farm with all the open space of the 3,000 acres that we farmed, I moved up to 6x6s. I really expanded.
You did.
And at the same time, what I realized is that working in a farm shop, driving a tractor or a combine, it was dirty. I didn't have time to do a 4-foot square painting, but I could sure as hell finish a 6x6 colored pencil and ink drawing in a matter of a couple of months. And so what began to happen once I got back to the farm is that as a result of contacts, I started having a number of graphic design projects to take care of where people paid me money for them. So having that experience at Washington State University Publications began paying its dividends, and it also gave me the opportunity to maintain my sanity in a county that this past election voted 78% for Donald Trump. So you can see what kind of environment I live in, and there's certain things you just don't talk about.
Sure. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. So you were making drawings at the time. So after you graduated your graduate degree, did you go back to Harrington at that time?
No. After my graduate degree, I moved to Seattle.
Okay.
And I had these 3 letters, MFA, after my name.
Yeah.
I thought the world was mine. I'm ready to conquer the world. The only work I could find was doing black line illustrations for an underground newspaper. And I was damn embarrassed to admit that with this fancy degree that the only work I could find was doing illustrations for articles in an underground newspaper. So I didn't want anybody to know that it was me. And so I started using a pen name. Actually, it was a pencil name. I started signing these drawings pencil. I didn't want anybody to know that Leslie William LePere was the one that had done these. And
because the magazine was disreputable, or
no, it was not disreputable. It's because I didn't want people to know. I wanted people to think that with an MFA, that you could sign your name, that the jobs would come flocking to you, whether it was teaching or graphic design or gallery opportunities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not the case.
You wanted something more upper crust.
I want something a little more upper crust, and I rather like the idea of having a pencil name. And there's a certain amount of secrecy to it. And so...
What was the newspaper covering?
Controversial social and governmental issues. It was called the Seattle Flag.
Was it like a socialist publication?
No, not at all.
No.
They covered the arts and the music, and if there was a local environmental issue or governmental issue, then they would address that from the, for lack of a better term, the liberal standpoint, the
so
democratic
kind of like
standpoint.
Maybe like a Seattle Weekly.
Exactly like a Seattle Weekly. Exactly like it.
Gotcha. Okay. So you were doing that. How long were you working in Seattle?
In the summer of 1980, on May, I think it was May 15th, Mount St. Helens blew. And
I remember I was about a week old.
You were. Boy, it must be nice to be young. So I lived in Seattle for 6 years, I was teaching at a private art school, showing at a gallery. I became friends with all kinds of interesting Seattle people. I woke up one morning and went, I'm done with teaching. I've been in school 12 years in Harrington, 4 years BA at WSU, 2 years graduate school. That's 6 plus 12 is 18, and then I taught for 5. That's 23 years. I woke up one morning and decided that I wanted to spend the energy that it took giving ideas and techniques and design and art information to students. I wanted to turn that back inward to my own creative spirit and my own creative energy pool. So I moved to a cabin on the Puget Sound where you could stick a pencil between the window and the window jamb and the wall, but it was right on the water. Pileated woodpeckers and cedar trees and everything rotted and went to fungus, but it was a beautiful, beautiful spot.
I love that area.
And I love
Were you
that
on
area.
one of the islands, or?
Well, it was on the mainland, but you take a ferry from Seattle to Bainbridge Island, cross Agate Pass Bridge, and that finger that sticks down toward Agate Pass Bridge is known as Sandy Hook. And if you follow that waterway in, you come to Paulsbo, Washington, which is on the mainland, and directly across the waterway, I'm guessing it was probably 3/8 of a mile, was the #1 military target in the world, and that's where the nuclear warheads for the submarines were stored.
Jeez. That's exciting.
But the water was 30, 40 feet deep out front, and #1 geoduck population in the world out there. And so on the day that Mount St. Helens blew, my friend and I had a 100-foot extension cord from the cabin out to the beach, and we were smoking a sockeye salmon on a grill under a cardboard box that was being smoked with green alder sapling. I mean, didn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
And so my dad called up one day, and I was married at the time to a debutante, and she was pretty. She came from a well-to-do family, and she didn't know how to do anything. She was not motivated. Can you imagine me living with somebody that wasn't motivated? That did not work. So I said, well, I'm going to move back to the family farm, and she said, I'm not going. It was a perfect way to change that social arrangement. So I moved to the farm by myself, and my parents built a house in my hometown of Harrington, and then I moved into the house that was built in 1953, a brick house with a full basement, by myself, essentially.
Did she eventually follow?
No, not at all.
No.
No.
That was the end of that.
That was the end of that. and fortunately, I mean, because it just... she was, like I said, she was a member of the social upper crust. I rather liked the idea for a period of time of a farm boy with wild oats and cheatgrass behind his ears, having the wherewithal and the coolness to develop a working relationship with someone of semi-high society in Seattle. Yeah, big deal. It didn't hold water very long, I'll tell you that. So I lucked out, kind of.
And so this is 1980 when you're back on the farm?
Yes, 1980, back on the farm.
Yeah. And did you start farming?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I started harvest when I was 15 years old, driving truck, and between so that would be 15 plus 40, so between 1961 in 1980, how many years is that? 29? No, 19.
Yeah.
I had missed one harvest.
Wow. So you went back every year?
I went back every year.
Yeah.
Because I could make good money.
They're growing wheat?
Yes, soft white wheat, which is used primarily for the production of top ramen style noodles.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. College students around the world are very thankful for your work.
Absolutely. and some grown-ups too.
Yeah, sure. So are you both making art and farming? Did you find time to make work at the same time?
Well, my art is what probably saved my sanity. At the time when you're young, I would spend 10, 12 hours on the tractor or farming. I can come home and work for an hour or two. I can't do that any longer because I don't have enough energy. But what began to happen was I continued to have a working relationship with the gallery in Seattle. I got book cover opportunities with Tom Robbins. I did calendars, I did business cards, I was painting watercolors at the time, and I would find, particularly during the winter, time to devote to my art because it came natural. I was having success psychologically and financially with it. And from a standpoint of saving my sanity, it gave me an outlet that was completely different than farming. And from a romantic standpoint, I'm a Gemini, and one of the characteristics of being a Gemini is that you're a person that has two different personalities. And so I love farming and I love art. And so each one was in conflict with each other, but yet with my love and passion for each one, it provided a balance.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah, that's great. And so are you farming now?
No. I haven't farmed for 5 years.
No. Okay. Yeah. And so how much time do you put in the studio each day?
I try to put 1 to 2 hours at the same time this time of year where I live. I'll show you an aerial picture, which I should send to you. So you can see it. I will send it to you.
Yeah.
There's a yard, a 5-acre yard around me that has trees and grass that I mow to make it look like somebody lives there. And so there's a lot of work to do. And right now, for example, I'm repainting the trim on the 1953 house windows, the thermal panes. And I fortunately have the assistance of a skilled craftsman from my hometown that's helping me prepare the surfaces and paint those windows. So my studio, when I stopped driving the tractor, I went to the catalog and purchased 3 more quality lamps. I'll send you a picture one of these days, Franco, what my studio looks like, but I have essentially 5 workstations. It's my parents' living room. And to backtrack and to make this interview and my life here a little more complex yet, because I do like complexity, is that when I moved back to the farm, my studio was in a room that used to be my parents' dining room. It was small. And when Eva, my soon-to-be second wife, who grew up in the Czech Republic, came to America, unable to speak a word of English. She was a midwife in the Czech Republic and became a dental hygienist in the United States. Her name was Eva Samova, and she was artistic, she was bright, she was healthy, she was good looking, and we really enjoyed each other's company. So when it came time for Eva to move to the farm, which was about 95, we started dating in 1990, she said, Leslie, let's do a surface remodel. So we're going to put black and white checkered floor in the kitchen. We're going to put some hardwood floor in the studio. Let's move all your studio stuff into the living room. At the time, the living room had 1 light, 1 painting, and a couch that my parents had left. I took all that stuff out, and by the time the remodel had been done, I went, Eva, this stuff won't fit back into that room. Let's turn what was my parents' living room into my studio. So it's packed with tools, tables, and stuff on the walls and ceiling.
Yeah.
So
do you find that like the work that you're doing, like with the mowing, the repainting, does that kind of like supplant a little bit the farm work, like the same kind of energy of like taking care of land? Does it kind of feel like a similar vibe?
I think it's more like doing I think it's more like doing sculpture, like conceptual sculpture, where you do something and the tide comes in and it's gone. Because you mow the grass, it feels good, it looks like somebody lives here, and it's neat and it's trimmed, And I mean, even though it's not like a park, but it's kind of like a park. I have neighbors that say that kind of looks like a park down there, LePere. But out of respect for my parents, the fact is that they paid for my college education, and I feel a certain amount of not only respect for that, but I want to keep it as well as I can, because they gave me the opportunity to get a college education.
Yeah, right.
And I will never forget that. And at the same time, I like being able to get up in the morning and look out the window and see that the weeds are trimmed and the leaves are picked up. And I mean, I have a perennial garden that's, the weeds in it are damn near as tall as you, Frank. So I am by no means, everything is by no means under control.
Yeah.
But the grass around the house looks good. The grass on the outer yard looks good. The buildings aren't collapsed.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious how you got in touch with the Ebbendorf jewelry making crowd, because you're not a jeweler by trade. You were making pencil drawings and watercolors and things like that. How did you get connected with this group of crazy jewelry makers?
Good question. In the summer of 1966, while I was enrolled in a courses to become a full-time architecture major, I flunked calculus from Dr. Kent. I can picture him as if he is walking into this room today. And I was an excellent mathematician in high school in terms of geometry and trigonometry and algebra. When it came to the way this sour old puss introduced me to calculus, it just wet my newspaper. I didn't care for it.
It was the teacher.
The teacher,
the subject
absolutely.
in this case.
So I'd flunked it. And so in order to maintain my no draft status, I needed to have X number of credit hours. And since I'd flunked it, I didn't get those credit hours, so I was behind. I went to summer school to pick up my credits. So I took a ceramics class, walked into ceramics class, and there's this guy sitting on a throwing wheel, 1966, mind you. He had hair down to his top of his shirt collar. We became friends immediately. His name was Ken Corey. He grew up in that university town. His father was chairman of the botany department. He, at the time, was going to, at this time it was called California College of Arts and Crafts, and he was home that summer, so we decided to take a ceramics class just because he could. He and I hit it off tremendously. We threw a Jungian bottle one night. That's a bottle that where you throw a long neck and you take it around and cut a hole in one side and go to the other side and cut a hole so there's no inside or outside. It's all one surface.
Okay.
We'd go downtown and go through the garbage cans looking for stuff. We'd go to the country and go on escapades and look for stuff. We just really absolutely hit it off. And so once I got into graduate school, Ken was, let's see, let me get this straight. Ken had he got his undergraduate degree from California College of Arts and Crafts. And he came back to do his graduate work at WSU. And then about one semester later, I became a graduate student at WSU. So we had an opportunity to spend 2 years together, and we palled around. And so we started doing stuff together.
Did you keep making ceramics together, or?
We did not make any ceramics together. We did at that time. Conceptual art was on the front burner on medium high.
Sure.
And so we would in the art building, the building that was used for art. It was an old building built in the early 1900s. There was a door that didn't go to anywhere. We would take pencil and draw a doorknob and the hinges and put a number on the door. We did conceptual things. And then Ken went back after he got his master's degree. He went back to teach for a semester or two at California College of Arts and Crafts. And at that time, we were missing each other's friendship so much that we had a discussion about it and said to ourselves, we need to work on some pieces together, and let's just ship things back and forth through the mail.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the first pieces that we made, we signed Art Team. I mean, Pencil Brothers hadn't even been born then.
Mm-hmm.
And Art Team was a rather dry name for two people that were working on something.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we received nothing but criticism because in the 1970s, nobody worked on an art project with anyone else.
Interesting.
Now you can see, if you read the art magazines, you see friends or you meet people from academia, various places. I mean, now it's a hot deal. There's a half a dozen, 10 people in America that are working with their loved one or a male partner, female partner, a loved one, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we were doing it back then, 1970, 1968, 69, 70.
Mm-hmm.
But the assistant professors and the professors thought we were nuts. Why would you ever want to work on something with somebody else?
That's amazing.
My answer was, you know what a band is? You know what an orchestra is?
Yeah.
You know what a chorus is? It's people with different skills playing different instruments toward a common goal. That's all we're doing.
Yeah, they were still kind of in that idea of the artist as like the solo lone wolf sort of situation.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so people made fun of us. They wondered why we were doing that. But we were still a little wet behind the ears. So the first piece that we made, we signed Art Team. And it was made
Which is a great name.
It is a great name.
I know it sounds a little dry, especially now, I think, and maybe it actually hits a little better now.
It may well. And that piece that we made was purchased by Daphne Farrago, and that piece is in the permanent collection of the Boston Art Museum.
Nice.
And to slow forward a bit, I have in my possession another 20 Pencil Brothers pieces, and we now have pieces placed at the Houston Art Museum, the Tacoma Art Museum, the Ram Museum in Wisconsin, the Houston Art Museum, Junt Art Museum in Spokane. And guess what? Mr. Bob Ebbendorf called me up. We became close friends.
So backing up a little bit, Art Team became Pencil Brothers.
Okay, yes. And you want to hear the story behind
Let's
that?
go, yeah.
Well,
Shake it out. Get ready.
I was living in Seattle, teaching art school, living in the city, and Ken had moved back to Ellensburg because he got a job teaching jewelry at Central Washington State College. So I had $10 in my pocket. A train ride from Seattle to Ellensburg over the Cascades was not only beautiful, but it only cost $5.
You'd have $5 left over
for a hamburger and cold beers. And I'd go back to Seattle and turn around and do the same thing in another 2 or 3 months, 2 or 3 weeks. So I thought I had already described this. So in Seattle, I started signing my pieces because I didn't want people to know. Is this answering your question, or did I lose track here?
So we were talking about how Art Team became Pencil Brothers.
Okay.
But you were signing your pieces pencil.
I was signing my pieces pencil. And so one weekend, after taking the train to Ellensburg, Ken lived in a small house close to the university. Sitting on his living room table where we did a lot of our work was an enamel radiator ornament that said Dodge Brothers. Champlain enamel. I mean, they were using really cool crafted items for automobile decorations there. And I think that BMW is using plastic now, low fire enamel. They may call it enamel, but Champlain enamel is fired at 1410, and low fire enamel is in the couple hundred degrees less than that. So that emblem was sitting on the table, and Ken and I were working away, working in the sketchbooks and whatnot, and I had brought some pieces from Seattle that I'd signed pencil, and Ken looked at that and looked at this emblem and said, "LePere, since in Seattle you're lead pencil, maybe I should be Red Pencil. We could be the Pencil Brothers, better red than lead. And so the Pencil Brothers were born. So today, to fast forward, after meeting Ebbendorf.
And for those of you who don't know Bob Ebbendorf, go back a few episodes and listen to, I think, number 4 with my interview with Bob.
Okay, thank you. And so Ken had met Bob Ebbendorf at Vail and a number of other summer craft workshops across the United States. So they'd known each other and of each other for a long, long period of time. So you have to bring me back down to reality here.
Yeah, so we're talking about how you got in touch with Bob. Ken had met Bob first, and he met him through something in Vail.
Yes, a summer workshop. So somewhere I was living at the farm. I'm guessing the mid '90s. I got a letter from Bob Ebbendorf, and I communicated with him for a couple of months, and then I went, "Who is this guy? I don't know who this guy is." And he's asking me all these questions and sending me postcards and asking and really attempting to become close friends or something. I don't even know who the hell he is. I just stopped communicating. And then I was invited to give a guest lecture in Yuma. Don't ask me when it was. About 6 or 7 years ago. And Neely Tompkins and the gang invited me to do a guest lecture on my artwork. So
you're still just doing drawings at this point, or were you and Ken?
Yeah, I'm doing watercolors.
What were you and Ken working on?
Ken and I started. We were working on Champagne enamel pieces.
Oh, so you were working on enamel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And which reminds me of one of the things. Kenny and I weren't doing it to make money. We weren't doing it to put pieces in a show. We did it because we enjoyed and loved each other's company and the camaraderie and the jocularity of working on something with somebody that you really like, that you love, and that you get along with, and that you bounce ideas off and they go back and forth, and all of a sudden synergy takes place. Ken Corey plus Les LePere equals 3. 1 + 1 = 3, and we became the Pencil Brothers. So
you're in Yuma.
We're in Yuma, and I was scheduled to give a guest lecture on the history of my art. It included my own art, and it included Pencil Brothers information. And I was one of the not the preferred speaker. Help
keynote?
me with the keynote speaker.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank. Appreciate you being a grammarian, besides a fine gentleman. And
I can use a mean Oxford comma. I'll tell you that.
Okay, that's good to know. So I was sitting watching a guest lecture by. I can't think of her name. She lives in Philadelphia. She's a silversmith. She's got married in the last couple of years, and in the city hall chambers in Yuma, big soft plush seats, a big long table in front of those plush seats, and in back are the raised seats where the councilmen sit. And the guest speaker was at a lectern about front row seat level, and there were 2 big giant screens with the camera on the guest speaker. And I was sitting right next to a screen, and I'd go, "Look at that." So I took a picture off of the screen. So later on that day, I was downtown minding my own business, and here comes Ebbendorf, and he looks at me, and this is his story. He said, "There's the guy that was taking pictures during somebody else's guest lecture. How rude is that?" And then he looked at me close. He'd only seen me from the back. So then he saw what shirt I was wearing, something with some character and color and design and shape. And he saw, I turned, and he saw my face, and I looked at him because I knew what he looked like, and we both broke into tears because we were so happy and thrilled to meet each other face to face under surprise circumstances. And one of Bob's students, Zachary Lechtenberg, told Bob, he said, "You better go to Yuma this year. I see LePere as a keynote speaker."
Zach's doing a show here in the fall.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's really good. How many pieces will be a show? 8 or 10?
It's a good question. It's him and a friend of his who does ceramics. So his friend does kind of ceramic characters.
Characters?
Kind of similar to that. So 3D and
Excellent.
And enameling.
So that's how Bob and I met,
Yeah.
and we hit it off. And I will go to my grave wondering what happened when Bob contacted me. And I followed up, and then I dropped the ball. I will take that to my grave, and I'm not happy about it. It's too bad, and so we're trying to make up for lost time.
How long was that period?
I'm guessing it was 10 years.
Oh,
not
wow.
more.
Wow.
Now we're making up for lost time.
Yeah.
Sometimes we talk 4 or 5 times a week, if not more. Sometimes 3 times in a day.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're really brothers. We just had separate mothers.
Yeah.
And if you stop and look at the work that he does, I don't care if it is found object amalgamation. He's working with subject matter. He's working oftentimes with a combination of opposites in terms of color, form, and material. And even though I'm working flat and he's working 3-dimensional, if you look at the skeleton and break those pieces down academically, we're brothers.
Wow. And are you still working with Ken? Or how long did that last? Are you still working together?
Ken Corey, I got a call from Ken's favorite female student, Nancy Warden. And she said, just got a call from Ellensburg. Ken died in his sleep.
Recently?
1994.
Oh.
He's been dead 25 years.
Wow. Okay.
Ken Corey, even though, and he, by this time, he had hair down to the middle of his back, full beard. Mm-hmm. But he was an academician. He went to class on time. He taught his students the Hoyle's book of jewelry fabrication techniques. He was to class on time. He demanded a lot of his students. I visited a number of his classes, and he didn't show up for work one day, and that was absolutely unheard of based on his track record. And so the chairman of the department called up one of the city policemen who knew Ken, because if the policeman's badge broke and the back needed to be soldered back on, guess who the hell they went to? The man that was teaching jewelry.
Yeah.
And they walked in and found Ken dead in his bed.
Wow. Wow.
And I will send you a book one of these days. He had a retrospective show of his work at the Tacoma Art Museum. Ken's sister, who lives in San Francisco, and Ken hadn't talked to each other for 30 years, but she spearheaded an effort to make sure that Ken's work is, and along with Nancy Warden, very well-known jeweler, that his work has been scattered around at important locations and museums, or museums and institutions around America.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Professor Ebbendorf said, you better figure out where those pieces are going. So I've taken it upon me, and we have pieces that are going to the Enamel Foundation, which means Yale and the Crocker and Little Rock, Arkansas, and some other pieces that I'm designating, and they're all being reframed, so they're full conservation. Mm-hmm. And so one of my goals in the next year or so is to call up, can you imagine, writing a letter, and I have in my head Boston Art Museum, and telling them they have a piece that and they're not going to send it to me. The professionals I've talked to, they'd never consider sending it to me to turn it into full conservation. But I will send them a polite business style letter with diagrams showing them that there was that flat ink colored pencil original is up against window glass backed by rosewood, which is full of acid. Look at the take it apart and look at the track on that 80-pound arches paper that rosewood full of acid has left. So I have a lot of work to do to get things dispensed, brought up to full conservation status, and one of the things that I asked a number of students at East Carolina, okay, you're going to a nice art school here, and I see that the jewelry department is on the top floor. You guys are in deep cotton. Have you had a class on conservation yet? No. Now, I believe it was Marissa Sainholtz told me of one of her friends, I can't remember the woman's name, that teaches jewelry at a major university, that is devoting a quarter or a semester to a class that describes how to photograph your work, how to catalog your work, how to track your work, how to develop a professional bio, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, that's great, because not many universities do anything near.
Of course not.
That.
And so, and this is one of the difficulties. See, the universities at this time are conceptual, not practical.
Yeah, right.
And are they afraid that they're going to become too tool-oriented or too practical-oriented? No. But you need to give the students a background in things that are going to allow your graduates to fulfill the job requirements in order to maintain a healthy art climate in the United States.
Yeah.
Get with it. Step up to the plate.
Very few even now are doing anything like that. You know, I graduated in college in 2005, and we didn't get anything like that.
Where did you graduate from?
University of Houston. And, you know, it's like you're insulated, you know, with the same people for 2 years, and it's like, okay, go be an artist now. There you go.
And between you, me, and a fence post, I think it's an outgrowth of abstract expressionism, where the idea is that what I do is good. I don't want you to tell me what to do, and that I am my own man in a sea of a number of islands, and I have a job. I don't care if you get one. I mean, it is so short-sighted academically that what really surprises me is that the deans of the departments of the social and health sciences, for example, is not saying, you guys sharpen your pencil, step up to the plate, teach your students how to get a job, how to prepare a portfolio, how to make a professional presentation.
Yeah, totally. It's
that
ridiculous.
needs to be done.
For sure. Do you and Bob collaborate on pieces?
Yes, we've collaborated on about half a dozen pieces.
You seem like, it sounds like you're kind of like a natural collaborator.
We are natural collaborators.
But that you personally, it seems like you really like that process of finding somebody to work with on things.
Yes, I do.
Did you work with anybody before Ken?
No. But I'm also working with a person by the name of Charlie King, who was Ken Corey's premier male art student at Ellensburg, and Charlie King has his master's from Rhode Island School of Design in Providence, and he and I have a company called Sandy Parr. Did I show you these the other day?
I haven't seen these, no.
And so some of these are we're
looking at enamel pins right now.
We're looking at Champa enamel pins. Yeah. And here's the piece that was done for Yuma, that was done for Neely Tompkins and the Yuma Art Symposium.
Yeah.
And just like the Pencil Brothers, make the back look as good as the front.
Well, I have one of your pins, you know.
Which one?
The Airedale.
The Airedale, good. I was hoping you did.
Yeah. Yeah, you gave me the Airedale when you were here last. That's good.
And anyway, those are some samples.
Yeah. So you do a little bit of collab with Bob.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a little bit of collab with Bob and a little bit of collab with Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in the process of, I shouldn't be telling you this, but I also have some commissions that have been on my drawing board for too long that I need to take care of. And this summer's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Fall is here. I hate to say it, but I can't wait till next winter. How are we doing in terms of time?
We're good. We're getting close to the end.
So ask some more questions.
So I'll go to this one. This is one that I ask everybody. Is there we can start with a particular artwork, and go broader if we need to. But is there a particular artwork that you can recall that was just simply
Absolutely
so impactful?
Absolutely.
Go.
Rene Magritte.
Tell me about it. Which one? Can you think of a specific one?
I have one that I look at almost every day, and it's the one with a comb and a derby hat. Excuse me, with a comb leaning up against the wall. Rene Magritte. Oh, Frank, help me. What's the name of the jeweler that did butterflies? That did a couple of butterflies, enamel butterflies.
Surrealist?
Oh, no, not surreal. I'm sorry that I can't remember his name. I'm going to call you up when I think of it and give it to you.
What did Magritte do for you? When you saw his work, what did that do for you?
I looked at it and went, what a funny combination. And it made me feel good inside. It created mystery. It didn't answer all the questions. And it had some kick to it. It's like having a taco without putting any seasoning on the taco. And Magritte, boy, you can have green chili if you want. You can have red chili if you want. And it provided mystery.
Yeah. And
how to create mystery so that man is scratching his head, but is still recognizable. In other words, I know exactly what's going on there, but then you look at the combination and don't know it. It echoes life to me.
So are you saying Magritte is kind of like a taco, but he also puts the salsas on the side, and he's like, choose your salsa?
That's correct. And coming into this gallery, it looks like an art gallery. You look like a dealer. There art dealer. There are frame pictures. There are ceramics. There are prints in a rack. It looks like an art gallery, but you don't know what all the pieces look like yet.
Yeah.
So there's some surprise there.
Right. There's living in Houston, there's the Menil collection, and they have one of the largest collection of surrealist paintings. So they got a bunch of Magrittes there. Oh. And there's this one in particular that I go to every time I'm in Houston, where it's like you can't tell if it's night or day. You know, it's like part of it looks like it's night, but then the sky looks like it's day, but then you look down back at the night, and the light is coming down in such a way that you're like, oh wait, is it daytime? So it's like it has this really, like, you can keep playing with it and just go back and forth, and I love that.
So I know what you mean. I love that too. I'd give my eye teeth to think about this jeweler that did these enamel and jeweled brooches and pins. He's very famous. And I'm sorry that I can't think of his name. I can picture his pieces. But secondarily to that, a couple of years ago, I had the good fortune of being in Paris, and there was a Rousseau show at the train station. And Rousseau is one of my favorites. And to see some of his paintings that were 6, 7, 8 feet square, and being able to see them up close, shed a whole new light on his work and on the methodology that and on how he applied paint. Once you photograph those pieces and go through the offset printing process, you are not able to see the layerments.
Right.
And there were pieces there that Rousseau did. he painted, his pigment was applied very thinly, and you could see where he'd gone in and had redone the leaves in one of his jungle scenes, and you could see the leaves that he painted over. That's how thin he applied his pigment. He's one of my favorites. How come I can't think of the name of that jeweler? Oh, it's going to drive me crazy, Frank. And so when I think of it after we're done with this recording,
I'll just come in with his name.
Yes, you're going to have to make an addendum. But that's okay.
Yeah, right.
I mean, is this a Peapod cast?
We could do that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love Magritte. Sure.
Me too.
So did you feel like that had an impact on the way you made work?
Indubitably.
Yeah.
Indubitably.
Yeah.
And even though my manifestations are different, the idea of putting together odd combinations, because life is a series of odd combinations. I mean, you can go on public television and watch somebody paint a bowl of roses. And they're putting that on there because that is something that they know a lot of their viewers like. But by being able to enjoy surrealism, which to me echoes an interesting life, it means that you don't mind being mystified. You don't mind being surprised.
Yeah.
And the idiosyncrasies and the juxtapositions and the timing of things become more enjoyable and more relevant. You're not afraid to say that you like that combination of things, or that thrills you. I don't have all the answers. I'm not quite sure why I like it that much, but I sure do. And the mystery of it is in no way depleted because I have a degree of uncertainty.
Yeah. I think, like, I don't know that I can be really good friends with somebody that isn't comfortable with mystery. Like, I feel like that's almost a requirement to, like,
I'm the exact same way.
Yeah.
I'm the exact same way. And that's one of the nice things about the art area is that the real professionals are directed. They have their own world, but they're not afraid to listen to you talk about their work or your work. They're open for exchange. And there are a number of artists that just go, my stuff is way better than yours. I don't like yours very much. And I think that violates one of the underlying roots of art, is that it can be used as a springboard for communication, not only to decorate your room or to decorate a gallery, but it can be used as a way of looking at your world, and it can be used as a reason and a methodology to meet new people. Yeah. I mean, without art being something that you and I share, Frank, you and I wouldn't be here.
Right.
So it acts as a common goal, and that's a neat thing.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I could sit here and put quarters in your jukebox all night long. Do you have any exhibitions, anything to plug, anything coming up that people can see your work at?
I've moved back to in 1980, I moved back to the community. Until 5 years ago, I was actively farming, and that took all of my time. But now that I've stepped off of the tractor, I have combined forces with a couple of people that have moved into my hometown that have redone buildings. And there is a young couple that have come in and have put in a coffee shop. And they have light lunches available. They have added a spark to downtown Harrington. They've redone a corner of an old-time building. And up the street, 3 blocks from them, is the old Lincoln Hotel. And it's in the process of being remodeled, and there was a neon sign that was probably put up in the 30s that hasn't worked for 50 years. And I told the owners of that building, I said, I'll put you in touch with John Rankin, 20 miles from me in Ritzville. He does neon, he does refurbishment. You light that baby to make it look like something's going on. So they had the neon sign, the neon rebuilt, and it repainted. It's on at night. So not to be outdone, the young people that have the coffee shop, I said, Heather, why don't you let me design, or Heather and Justin, why don't you let me design a neon sign for your coffee shop? So one of their symbols that they use on a number of things, napkins, baseball caps, is a coffee cup of a specific design. And it says on the name of this coffee shop is the Post and Office, because it used to be the Post and Office when I was but a mere youth in Harrington. And so I designed a neon sign for them, and it's up now. I will make sure and send you pictures of both of these signs.
Nice.
that I've spearheaded the effort to have those redone. And one more example in Harrington is that there is a brick building that had the word Caterpillar written or painted on it, a sign on a brick wall. The local historian doesn't have any idea why that building that had a wood floor in it had the word Caterpillar on it, because the Caterpillar repair shop and sales shop was up the street a block. I opened discussion with local people, and I said, that old Caterpillar sign, there's a local man that is a farmer, an artist, and I've seen some signs that he's painted. I'm collecting money to repaint that Caterpillar sign. So in a matter of a New York second, I collected $450, so that sign has been repainted.
Nice.
There are a couple of other old signs in Harrington that I'm in the process of gathering funds. So my sister said, and she doesn't pay many compliments, she said, Leslie, what you're doing there, where you grew up, is helping relive, redecorate, and respect some of the past. And she said that is really cool. So I'm using my art to beautify the area that has become run down, because it's no longer cool to live in a small town. They die. You used to be able to buy 3 cars, a tractor, hardware, dry goods, drugstore, 2 grocery stores, a plumber. And now there's 1 or 2 stores. But it's slowly...
I think it's becoming cool again.
It's becoming cool again.
Yeah.
People are wanting to move to the country. They're absolutely fed up. Last time I went to Seattle, I was being interviewed by Susan. I can't remember anybody's names. She is the publisher of a book that she is backing on the history of jewelry and art in the Northwest in the 60s and 70s, of which the Pencil Brothers are a large part. And I want to call her Susan Hayward. Susan Cummins. She's from California, and she has a writer. And I went to Seattle to be interviewed, and I know my way around Seattle, having lived there for 5 or 6 years. And there are so many cranes, you can't go from point A to point B without getting lost.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's really nuts. I remember last time I was there, I felt that. So if you're taking a road trip around Spokane, they can take a detour down to, tell me the name of the town again.
Harrington. And what you must understand here, young man, is that the house that I live in, a brick house built in 1953, I have a dry basement. And when Eva, God rest her soul, was still alive, Eva died of breast cancer 6 years ago. I miss her every day. She loved art. She got me off the farm and we traveled. Italy, Costa Rica. I went to Czech Republic with her for 6 or 7 times, and to have an opportunity to see Prague. We got married in the Czech Republic. We wore 14th century costumes.
Wow.
And come to Harrington. I have a guest room in the basement that will take you back to the 1950 era of decoration and accoutrements.
Nice.
And
this isn't an open invitation to all the listeners, is it?
No, just to you, Mr. Rose.
But if somebody out there is listening, they want to see your work, they can detour through Harrington and look at those neon signs.
Absolutely. And you call Frank up to get my number or my email address, and I'll meet you at the coffee shop, and we'll have a bun and coffee.
There you go. And you could put quarter in Les's jukebox.
That's right.
Well, this has been so much fun, Les. Thank you so much.
Frank, thank you for the invitation. It was a surprise. It's nice to see you back in your domain in this gallery, and I'm going to figure out how to do something to put up in here. So this is just the beginning. Thank you.
You're going to worm your way in.
I'm going to worm my way in. Shoehorn my way in. Thank you, Frank.